Quiet, everyone.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Take Two. Glad you guys could be here with us, and glad you guys can join us online. Uh, a couple of things to let you know, announcements. I'll remind you one thing. We are collecting money for Haiti. We are helping a village buy Bibles in Creole, and if you would like to help with that, it's basically $10 a Bible. And so if you contribute $10, you're buying someone in Haiti a Bible. We are going to work together with For a Reason, who's going to make sure that this transaction takes place, and it will be done in a way where your money goes directly towards that. Share that with you because we've raised, I don't know, just over $2,000, like $2,300 or something like that.
We're probably at about 26 to 28 right now.
Okay, we're between $2,600 and $2,800. So anything you give can help, and we'll at the end of this month give to For a Reason what we can, and I'll talk to Denise and see if we can continue doing raising money for that. But just so you guys know, we are collecting that. And what other announcements do we have, Jordan? You're the announcement guy. Throw you on the spot here. What's happening this week?
Well, as far as this week goes, yesterday we had our monthly Art for Artists where people gather in the Genesis building and they bring their art. We share what we've created and we start discussion around kind of our experience through art. It was really nice. Had some new people show up. Had a really, really interesting doodle painting thing. It was this thing. It took like 3 years to make, and it was really impressive. So that was really fun. I encourage you guys to come out. It's every second Tuesday. Today we're having Take Two right now. And then this Friday at 8 p.m. at the Genesis Works building, we're having something called the Night Sesh. And anybody can come to the Night Sesh. It's not for artists, it's for anybody. And it's basically a time where there's good Wi-Fi, tables, chairs, and a nice air-conditioned space where people are going to come to work on stuff. You could work on your taxes. You could work on a business project. You could work on art. But it's time for people that have stuff to do to get together in a room of other stuff, of other people doing stuff, and kind of work within that atmosphere. And that's what's going on this week.
That's great. And again, we're trying to just move forward. I know the pandemic's still going on. Hopefully, if you're vaccinated, that eliminates a lot of the possibility of serious ailment. At least that's what I've been told by people I trust. And so we are trying to move forward cautiously. If you've not been vaccinated, please take care of yourself. Do what's necessary so that you are safe. Anyway, that's what's happening. Okay. Last Sunday, we continued our series on the politics of Jesus. And it was a very popular passage where it's eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It's if someone slaps you on one cheek, turn the other. In fact, let me read the passage before we get started. It's from Matthew 5, verse 38 to 42. And Jesus speaking, he says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you." And so some very powerful words from Jesus regarding our interaction with one another. I started off contextualizing this passage with the rest that we've been going through. In other words, this is all connected, where he's talking about don't commit murder and anger connected to that, don't commit adultery, lust connected to that, divorce and the idea of oaths and the idea of what God desires for us. All these things are connected, and he kind of goes on to this passage as well. Let me throw this at you, Jordan. I mean, you've heard this passage before. What are your thoughts on this and maybe some of the things I shared, or questions, or give me some?
Okay. Well, I think it's interesting where this is one of the things I really like about history, where if something is, if you're reading something or being told something that's not from your culture or not from your time, it's hard to just take it at face value and really appreciate it, because you don't have the same lenses that the people of the other culture or the people of the other time had. And I really appreciate in this series where you take a good amount of time to kind of like pause and say, like, don't look at it from your Southern Californian to 2021 view. Like, these people had a totally different society. They had a totally different way of thinking. When they said this, it didn't mean what we think it means. And to that, I think that kind of my history of knowing the kind of stuff that we're going over has been changed from like understanding more of the background as to why these things are going on, or what's really being said. Because I think a very face value or like kind of fortune cookie version of the Bible is like, just do good and everything will be great all the time. It'll be awesome. And you just have rainbows everywhere. And it's like, man, we all go to heaven and then we sing gospel songs. And while that's great, I think when you kind of look into the background and the reality of why things were happening and who these people were, and they were being oppressed by different people at the same time. Like, you have the Pharisees and you have the Romans, and they're not friends really.
Right.
But there's this climate that Christianity is growing up in, and it's not as straightforward as just like, oh, follow these rules and be great. And so when I think about the kind of stuff that Jesus is saying, it's interesting that I feel he is speaking to everybody. He's speaking to humans. He's speaking to people, even though at the time there were these different groups that were very separate. And he finds a way to speak in a way that touches everybody, that they can hear, in a way they can understand, because a lot of times, even if we're all talking English, people speak different languages. And it invites everybody to be more of one person. I wrote a couple of notes during the while I was listening to it today, and one of the things that I thought was interesting, where you were saying he invites you, or like when he calls himself an equal, when he shows you the other cheek, or when he walks that extra mile with you, he is kind of showing you what you're doing and showing you who you are. And I thought it was kind of a really beautiful take on Jesus kind of just playing the role of an accountability partner.
Explain that a little bit more. What do you mean by accountability partner?
Well, I think nowadays, my understanding of an accountability partner is like, Sam, I'm out of shape. I want to get in shape, but I don't have any motivation or discipline. So I would like you to be my accountability partner. And basically that means, Sam, I want you to annoy me on a consistent basis and make me feel bad about making bad health choices so that I can make better health choices. Which I don't think works all that well, but the idea of someone like checking, hey, did you do this? Hey, did you, like, thanks, Mom, kind of thing.
I was going to mention moms in there, but I didn't.
But the way Jesus does it is not kind of like pointing the finger and saying like, hey, you need to get up to level, you need to do this. He's kind of, rather than emphasizing the person, he emphasizes the environment. And he says, this is what things really are. This is who we really are. Not like you need to get better. It's we are this. Let's treat each other like what we really are. And I think that kind of does the same thing.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, because the whole point of this is a kingdom character, right? It's kingdom mentality. It began in chapter 4, really, when Jesus says, repent and believe the gospel, the kingdom of heaven is here. And so the whole point is, how do we step into that character, right? How do we see that character as alive and real and something that is relevant where we're at, right? And so I think it's important that we do see it as something that we are trying to live into. right? We are trying to live into this kingdom mentality, and it looks like Jesus, really. And this is Jesus giving us examples of what it looks like. I started off by, all these things Jesus is giving what they considered the heavy commandment, and then the light, don't commit murder. That's the heavy one. The light one is, don't be angry with your brother. And Jesus is kind of saying these are all connected. And in this case, what he's doing is he's bringing a heavy commandment in that the eye for an eye, the tooth for a tooth was something that was used to regulate retribution, right? It wasn't just like, yeah, you get my eye, I'm going to get your eye. It was, you can't take more than an eye, right? If you get my eye, I can't take your head. It was meant to limit that kind of retribution, and that was seen as a huge advance. This is better. And I gave the example of Samson, who had just kept escalating, right? Samson, his wife got taken away, so he burned their crops, and then they killed his family, then he killed 1,000. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And we see that and we say, oh man, that's a good thing. That's stopping that retribution. And Jesus is saying that's not enough. That might be a good foundation, but the kingdom looks different, right? The kingdom looks different. It's not about an eye for an eye. It's not about, just exacting this kind of retribution. He goes on and he says, don't resist the one who is evil, which is just a bizarre thing to say. But the whole point of that is not to continue down that vein, right? Don't continue in that mentality of I need this kind of justification. And that's where the switch takes place. And that's where the challenge at least comes to me, because I don't want to be taken advantage of, right? I don't want people to think they're getting away with something. I feel like it's justice to bring about the truth. And my idea always seems to be in line with the truth, at least in my mind. And so that then starts to have this kind of, yeah, I'm right to be able to put my voice and to be able to show you where you're wrong and what's wrong with that, right? And I think we see a lot of that taking place, on social media, in the political arenas today. And I think Jesus is pressing into that mentality where he's trying to help us reimagine, this social construct and what it looks like. And how we do that is the challenging part. How do we reimagine these kinds of things, right? How do we not compete with that person in their strong arming a position? Right? And that's a challenge, at least for me, Let me ask you this. Having heard this, is there anything that came to your mind, maybe of an example where you're seeing this play out, and how you would imagine or reimagine interaction with someone in this kind of arena?
Okay. Yeah, I think so. I think before I forget, I wanted to emphasize in the story of Samson, you're explaining it, like in terms of escalation, like the dude's dad was like, no, you can't have my daughter as your wife. And then Samson went out and captured 300 foxes. Like, think about catching one fox. And he went out by himself and captured 300 foxes and then tied the tails of foxes together and lit them on fire. Like, that's some major escalation. I don't know. When I was listening to you say, I was like, "Wow, that's extreme." But
yeah, there's a lot of questions there. But
yeah. But in terms of what you're asking, I think it helps a lot when you read something like this that's not really designed for somebody living in your time, in your place, to have examples that kind of flow more to your time and place. And kind of to take it generally, I was thinking that what Jesus was saying with his extreme examples for that time is kind of like, I think usually we think of people that offend us as lower. So like if Sam offends me, or he does something to treat me like a second-class citizen, in my mind, I'm like, Sam's bad because he treated me bad. So Sam, in my mind, is bad. He treated me bad, so he's bad. And they treat us as less, so we view them as less. And I think Jesus is challenging us to say, just because he forgot that I'm a human and he treated me here, doesn't mean that I should forget that he's a human. And I think a lot of times we fall into this trap of matching emotions or matching energy. I read this book called Crucial Conversations, and it had a really interesting idea of emotions changing motives. So sometimes when I'm talking to Sam, let's say me and Sam are roommates, and Sam doesn't know how to clean dishes apparently, and I am trying to
Talk to my wife.
I'm trying to nicely explain to Sam, like, hey man, maybe you should wash the dishes. But then Sam gets defensive and says something mean to me. And then I get defensive and I start being mean back to Sam. Originally I was like, yo, my motive is to get Sam to wash these dishes. But now that Sam has been mean to me and I've gotten emotional, my motive has changed to telling Sam that I'm right. And the dishes don't even matter. He just needs to know I'm right. And I think a lot of the time we have that like accepting of the emotion and then pushing it back because I felt it. And so now that's my state and giving it back. And I think what Jesus is inviting us to do is say, like, you don't need to be affected by what they're doing. You could still be kingdom. You could still treat them as a person. You could still have your original intentions, and they're not bad.
Yeah, I think that's important because I think that emotion is definitely the motivation for most of what we see happening, right? You know, you when you say I need to clean the dishes and I'm feeling hurt by that, immediately I want you to feel that emotion, right? So why don't you clean your room? You know, if you clean your room, I'll clean the dishes. You know, it's like we start doing that, you know, again, just escalating the situation. And because of that emotion, and again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about the week before, it deals with pride, it deals with ego. You know, when he says if someone slaps you on the right side, your right cheek, that was disgraceful, right? That's what a superior did to an inferior, kind of using that mindset that you said, right? And a person would slap someone with their right hand. And I mentioned how even in the Hebrew Mishnah, which is a commentary on the Torah's laws, it was a more severe penalty if someone slapped you with their right hand on the right cheek, right, than if they slapped you on the left cheek with their right hand. But it was always the right hand, right? And so it'd be like backhand would be insulting you, like, how dare you? It's like you're the servant, I'm the master, you know, I'm the superior, you're the inferior. It was degrading. It was something that an employer would do to employee back in those days. Hopefully that's not still happening, right?
Don't let your boss do that.
Yeah, don't do that. It was that kind of degrading. And then when Jesus says offer your other cheek, he is saying don't react in the emotion. What you're doing by offering in the other cheek, which would be your left cheek, is telling them to slap someone on the left cheek and using your right hand. You aren't doing the same thing. It was considered less degrading, and it was something more you would do with someone who is an equal. Okay, and again, that's so weird for us because we don't just go around slapping people, I hope, right? And so for us, it's like, man, that's still a slap. That still seems harsh. But what Jesus is doing is saying, react not in that manner. React as if, like what you said, you're here. I'm with you on that, right? And so I think getting to the emotion is at the heart of this. And how do we check our emotion, right? I mean, how do I, when I read that tweet, and it just boils my blood, you know, it's like, man, are you ignorant? What's going on? Don't you have any sense? Someone sent me a text after Sunday and about something that someone said. And when I heard what they said, I just thought, oh gosh, how could they say something like that? And this person wanted me to confront them with what they said. And I'm like, they didn't say it to me, you know, and I'm not going to respond in the emotion. And that person sat here Sunday morning and I said, I think you need to respond to them, but you need to do it with the politics of Jesus, right? And they just said, pray for me, you know, because it's a hard thing to do. Emotionally, you get wounded and they insulted you and you want to insult back. right? Because that makes you feel better. But instead of insulting to make you feel better, Jesus is saying, see yourself as better and react in a better way. I think having that makes it so that we don't react just in anger, but we react. And I shared this a few weeks ago. You know, there are people who I vehemently disagree with on things, but I have so much respect for them. And because of that respect, anything I say to them is filtered through that respect. Right? So I'm not going to say something angrily or insulting to them because I have too much respect for them. They have done so much to help me, my family, that I want to always communicate to them how important they are to me, even when I disagree with them. And it changes the tone of the conversation completely, right? Because now I'm not like, how do I prove you wrong, or what you said has offended me. They've already proven to me that they care, so I don't have to take it personally. And I think maybe that's a little bit where the rub is, when there are people who haven't shown us how much they care and we do take it personally. And Jesus is saying, why don't you talk to them like you would that person who you really care about?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a... Before I keep going, we have an audience today. If you guys want to participate, do that. If you guys want to ask questions and stuff, do that. If you guys are online, you want to like do this thing, and then like we'll read the questions, and we're here to like have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So raise your hand. We'll get that way we know, or else just yell. We'll know.
Yeah. But I think you were talking about kind of seeing yourself as higher and using that. I think that's what we call being the bigger person.
Yeah, and that could sound prideful in itself, right? And I don't mean it in that way, right? Yeah.
I didn't think you meant
Yeah,
prideful.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear, that it didn't come across